The little girl couldn't have been older than 6. She stood at the bakery counter on her tiptoes, her worn-out sneakers barely touching the floor, her eyes wide and fixed on the glass display case filled with birthday cakes decorated in pink frosting, gold sprinkles, and tiny sugar roses. But it wasn't the beautiful cake she was asking about. It was her mother standing behind her, a thin, trembling woman in a faded gray coat, who leaned toward the young cashier and whispered words that would stop time itself. She asked in the quietest, most broken voice imaginable if the bakery had any expired cakes. Any cakes that were about to be thrown away. Anything that nobody wanted anymore. Because today was her daughter's birthday, and she had nothing, absolutely nothing left to give her. Nobody in that bakery moved. The hum of the refrigerator, the smell of warm vanilla, and that question hanging in the air like a cracked bell that had already rung and could never be unrung. What no one in that bakery knew, not the cashier, not the mother, not the little girl tracing her finger along the glass, was that the tall man standing near the end of the counter, pretending to look at a box of pastries, had heard every single word. If you believe in the power of kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one small moment can change everything, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this today, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like this one are why we're here. Her name was Clara. She was 34 years old, and she had not always lived the way she was living now. There was a time not so long ago, really, just 3 years, when she had a small but warm apartment, a steady job at an accounting firm, and a husband who brought home grocery bags on Friday evenings and kissed their daughter Lily on the forehead every night before bed. Life was not extravagant. It was not filled with vacations or designer clothing or dinner parties. But it was whole, it was solid, it was theirs. Then the accident happened. Her husband Daniel had been driving home from a late shift on a rainy November night when a truck ran a red light. He survived barely, but the medical bills did not care about survival. They arrived in waves, each envelope thicker than the last, each number larger than anything Clara had ever seen on a single piece of paper. She fought as hard as she could. She worked double shifts. She borrowed from her sister until her sister had nothing left to give. She sold the furniture, then the car, then the apartment. Daniel recovered physically, but something inside him broke in a way that doctors couldn't measure or treat. He left one morning when Lily was at school and Clara was at work, leaving behind only a note that said he was sorry and that he couldn't be the man they deserved. Clara never heard from him again. From that moment it was just the two of them, Clara and Lily, navigating a world that had suddenly become enormous and indifferent. They moved into a small room in a shelter for families in transition. Clara found part-time work at a laundromat, folding other people's clothes with careful hands, while her own daughter sat in the corner doing homework on a donated tablet. Every dollar was counted, every meal was planned, every luxury, even a simple birthday cake, had become the kind of thing that required a miracle. And today was Lily's birthday. Clara had been saving for 2 weeks, coins from the laundromat floor, a few extra dollars from a neighbor who had asked her to watch his dog for an afternoon. She had managed to collect $11.40. She had walked past this bakery a dozen times, always looking at the window display with the kind of longing you learn to hide quickly before your child notices. Today she had walked in with her chin up and her heart hammering, hoping, just hoping, that the universe might offer her something. She had not expected to ask about expired cakes. She had promised herself she wouldn't. But then Lily had pressed her face against the glass and said, so softly and so sincerely, that the cake with the pink roses was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen in her whole life, and something in Clara simply gave way. Like a seam that had been held together by sheer willpower for too long, it finally split. And so she asked. She whispered it to the cashier, a young woman who looked startled and then uncomfortable and then genuinely sympathetic, though sympathy alone could not fill a cake box. The cashier had just started to explain that they didn't really keep expired products, that everything unsold was picked up by a food bank at closing time, when the man at the end of the counter set down the box of pastries he had been holding and walked toward them. His name was Richard Hale. If you had passed him on the street, you might not have looked twice. He was wearing a plain navy coat, no tie, no watch that announced itself. He was 61 years old, with silver at his temples, and the kind of quiet in his eyes that comes not from emptiness, but from having seen too much, and learned to carry it carefully. What very few people knew, because Richard had spent the last decade actively trying to keep it from being the first thing anyone knew about him, was that he was worth just over $400 million. He had built a logistics company from a single rented van and 30 years of relentless grinding work. He had also buried a wife, raised 2 children on his own for a stretch of years that nearly broke him, and stood in a grocery store once 28 years ago and had to put a box of cereal back on the shelf because he was $6 short and too proud to ask for help. He remembered what that felt like. He had spent the rest of his life remembering it. Richard did not make a scene. He did not announce himself or pull out a card or deliver a speech. He simply walked to the counter, looked at the cashier with calm, unhurried eyes, and said that he would like to purchase a cake, the one with the pink roses, in the display, and that he would like it to be made fresh and ready within the hour. He placed his card on the counter. Then he turned to Clara, who was staring at him with the particular expression of someone who has been caught being vulnerable and does not yet know whether to feel grateful or ashamed, and he told her that his daughter had loved pink roses too. He said it simply, as a fact, as a bridge between 2 human beings standing in a bakery on an ordinary Tuesday that was, for at least one small girl, the most important day of the year. Clara tried to refuse. Of course she did. She had been taught her whole life by pride, by necessity, by the grinding self-sufficiency of someone who had no other choice that you did not accept things from strangers. But Richard shook his head gently and told her that accepting kindness was not weakness. He told her that he had once been too proud to accept help, and that the pride had cost him more than the help ever would have. He said this without pity, without condescension, the way one traveler gives another directions on a road they both know is difficult. Lily, who had been watching all of this from beside the glass case, looked up at Richard and asked very seriously if his daughter liked the pink roses as much as she did. Richard crouched down to her level, this man who sat in boardrooms and signed contracts that moved entire economies, and told her that yes, his daughter had thought they were absolutely the most beautiful thing in the world. Lily nodded with the solemn authority of a child who has just had something very important confirmed. While they waited for the cake, Richard sat with them at a small table near the window. He learned that Lily wanted to be a veterinarian because she believed animals understood feelings better than most people did. He learned that Clara had a gift for numbers, that she had nearly finished an accounting degree before everything fell apart, that she still did other residents' taxes at the shelter on a donated laptop because it was the one thing that made her feel capable and useful and like herself. He listened the way people rarely listen anymore, fully, without checking anything, without waiting for his turn to speak, and by the time the cake was ready, something had shifted in the atmosphere between them in a way that was quiet but irreversible. He did not offer her money. Not that day, not directly. What he did was hand her a card, not his personal card, but the card of the HR director at one of his subsidiary companies. A mid-size financial services firm that had been looking for someone with exactly Clara's background for an open accounting position. He told her that he would make a call, that the rest would be up to her because it always should be. He said it the way someone says something they mean completely and without strings. Clara held the card with both hands. The cake box was tied with a white ribbon. Lily held it on her lap in the bus home, both arms wrapped around it like it contained something sacred, which, in every way that actually matters, it did. Clara watched her daughter's face, flushed and bright and full of the particular joy that belongs only to children who are still young enough to believe that the world is fundamentally good, and she allowed herself, for the first time in 3 years, to believe it too, just slightly, just enough. 3 months later, Clara started her new job. It was not a charity. She had gone through the full interview process, had answered every question with the precision and confidence of someone who had been quietly sharpening herself for years without an audience. She was hired on her own merit, because Richard had known the moment she mentioned doing her neighbor's taxes on a donated laptop in a shelter that merit was exactly what she had in abundance. She found a small apartment. She painted Lily's room yellow. She bought a bookshelf and filled it slowly, one book at a time. She never forgot the bakery. She went back exactly 1 year later, on Lily's next birthday, and she bought the cake with the pink roses herself. She paid full price. She left a tip so large that the young cashier called after her, and Clara just waved without turning around, still walking, her daughter's hand in hers, both of them moving forward into an ordinary Tuesday that felt, somehow, like a gift. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that one moment of compassion can rewrite an entire life, please leave a comment below telling me what part touched you the most. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded today that kindness is still alive in this world. Like this video so more people can find it. Your engagement is not just a number, it's a vote for the kind of stories that deserve to be told. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something personal. Drop a comment that says pink roses if you believe that every child deserves to feel celebrated, and that no mother should ever have to whisper a question like that alone. Sometimes the most powerful things in the world are not the largest, not the loudest, not the ones that arrive with fanfare and announcement. Sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is a man who has been $6 short in a grocery store, hearing a woman whisper a question in a bakery and remembering what it felt like, and choosing, without hesitation, without calculation, without any need for recognition, to make sure that on this day, in this small and glittering moment, a little girl with her face pressed against a glass case gets to carry home the cake with the pink roses, the most beautiful thing she has ever seen in her whole life. And it is